Now, some of the names that you've written for over the years, I mean, I could talk about, for example, Matt Monro and Lulu and Olivia Newton-John and Tony Christie and Barbara Dixon and the Barron Knights and Georgie Fame, Glenn Campbell we've mentioned. I want to go to Andy Williams, though, because you did a very good concept album with him a few years back.
We were very successful. In fact, it was a gold in the UK and a gold in Japan. It was a concept I had for about 5 years. As you know, from time to time, the classicals were given lyrics and they became successful, some. But there was never an album as such. And I had the idea, and I wanted Williams. I never really had the entree to Williams. And I knew a guy called Nicky Graham who worked for CBS Records, who in fact knew Andy and had recorded him. And I put it to him, and he got Andy, and we became partners in the project. We co-wrote and co-produced.
So why did you especially want Andy Williams?
The range, the quality, I mean, say, there's very few singers, in my opinion, maybe Streisand, who could in fact sing so pure, and Williams for me was a great singer.
So between the two of you then, you put the words to all the classical pieces?
And we would, Andy would phone us about lyrics he would like or dislike, and it was a long, arduous job in many ways, but it was fantastic when we walked into the studio and the Royal Philharmonic was there with Andy. It was, I suppose, a time to remember.
So how did you approach the Romeo and Juliet track? Because I would have thought that would be quite different to set to words.
Well, not really. It's the greatest love story of all times, isn't it? I mean, say, they died for love, and you can't do more than that.
But when you have a really famous piece of music like that, I would have thought very difficult to actually get the right words in a way to put with such a famous track.
Well, we worked very close with Andy, and he made us change 3-4 times until he was, well, I can't tell you what it was. He was great, really. But he gave us, he's a great professional, and rightly so. He wanted it to be perfect, and we all did. And eventually we got this mixture where we was all very, very happy with it.
Well, here's that track.
Two hearts that shared the greatest love. It's a story that stands the test of time. True love. Two hearts remain immortalized in their glory. They made the final sacrifice. How can we understand the passion in their hearts, the thrill of making plans, the promise that would last? The world was in their hands, but then it fell apart and left two broken hearts. Two lovers in all their innocence, they were guilty of nothing more than being in love. Chance, sad and lonely, victims of circumstance. Another place in time, they could have lived their dreams, they could have tasted life and all that love could bring, but that was not to be. And so they paid the price, and now it's history. Two lovers in all their innocence, they were guilty nothing more than being
It's from an album called The Great Love Classics by Andy Williams, and that was the Romeo and Juliet track. Actually, some great pieces on that, but Tony Hiller, who produced the album and wrote all the lyrics in conjunction with Andy Williams, is my guest, our featured composer, in fact, this week. You were just looking down the sleeve.
Actually, I wrote it with Nicky Graham. Nicky was the co-writer and co-producer. The album itself, the actual work, as it were, took about 5 or 6 weeks. But as I said before, there was a lot of transatlantic calls, and he was a very hard taskmaster, but it proved very successful.
Simply because he is a perfectionist.
Oh, he's a great pro. I mean, he's an amazing man, really. I think he was about 58 when he sang it, which was about 2-3 years ago, and sung like a bird.
Did he do it live with the orchestra as such? He didn't have that pre-recorded?
Now, what we did, in fact, it was very important, as you well know, that tempos, you know, when you get down with an orchestra that size, that you need, the tempos need to be perfect. So we would run through 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 times with the orchestra. And then when I laid the orchestra, or rather Nicky and I laid the orchestra, we then put Andy by himself, nice and quietly, and we took a lot of time, as I said, but it turned out great.
Were there any tracks on it that proved to be very difficult?
She'll Never Know. For some reason, we wrote 5 different lyrics.
Which one was that?
She'll Never Know.
Now, based on which music?
She'll Never Know, based on the Furley's by Beethoven, which for some reason we had a terrible time. But eventually, Andy was happy and we were happy, and then we cut it. But there was a lot of problems with that one.
Radio 2.